C2 Wrestling Podcast. Don't know the podcast number. Got it wrong last week. Not even going to try it this week. So, I'm not going to lie.
Mhm.
It is a little upsetting to not have Halloween costumes on.
It is a little upsetting to not have Halloween costumes on. I did think to myself at a point, how funny it would have been if you just showed up normal Chris CTD and I still was dressed as Jeff Hardy. That would have been hilarious. But the face paint was a pain in the ass. We're not doing that again. Maybe next year. Maybe I'll go as Papa Shango or something. We'll switch it up. But we are back though. Podcast number, who knows what? What do you want to talk about?
There's a few things I want to talk about because there's always things going on in the world of professional wrestling. And one thing I want to get us started with is the road to WrestleMania. We now know the
Mm-hmm.
path.
Yep.
All of the cities, not, I don't think it's the full road, but a majority of it has been announced. We know where Raws and SmackDowns will be taking place. And it was a very big surprise how many of the shows were overseas shows. I mean, that is not something we normally see during that stretch. I mean, they might do a little tour, in Europe or something like that for the live shows, but it is multiple Raw and SmackDowns overseas. The crowds are going to be great. I mean, these shows already feel big every week. It really feels like those are going to be like the most must see shows going into Mania season.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It is interesting to see, every now and again we get that London Raw once a year or something. They've done it in Tokyo, sure, things like that. Not common. It's not, back to back to back to back weeks of doing these shows in other countries. It is definitely an interesting thing to see. I'm looking forward to it. It does lead me to bring up the lack thereof in taped shows. You know, Generally speaking, taped shows are not the most must see wrestling. And that is what we might get out of a lot of these foreign shows, we'll call it, wherever they're going. I've seen the list. I don't have it on hand. I don't know off the top of my head exactly where they're going and when, but I do know they're going kind of all over within a crazy time frame for them. There's a lot going on for these wrestlers through that period of January to April. A lot of travel, a lot of events, press, everything with Mania coming up. It's a lot. It's a lot of wear and tear on them. Their schedules are not what they used to be. I'm sure they can handle it, but it is a lot going on. Good for the fans over there. Good for these European fans, all that. They want it. Cool. Why not? Right?
Yeah, I mean, we know the crowds are going to be great. We don't have to worry about that. Granted,
Mm-hmm.
the crowds normally in Mania season are pretty solid for those shows. So it's not like they were going to be the worst crowds ever because it is the hottest time of the year. But we know those crowds are way better for when they're in England. I saw they're going to Italy for one of the shows, and
Yep.
Triple H had said that they need to do a show in Italy because the crowd was apparently so great. So that does make me excited. Now, the SmackDown aspect, those are going to be taped. They're not going to
Yeah.
do it's on USA. Nothing you can really do about that. I don't remember how many of those shows are overseas, but we know that for sure. Raw is the interesting aspect, though, because this
Mm-hmm.
isn't current times. This is the future where the Netflix deal is underway. And with the Netflix deal, we already know that opens up so many doors. But do we get a 3 p.m. Monday Night Raw live on Netflix? And if you want to rewatch it later, it's going to be up right away. I don't know how their broadcasting works. I don't know if there's any restrictions. The Netflix era is going to be new to all of us, but it just feels like quite logical to have those shows, those Raws, air live, and you are guaranteed to not have a viewership drop off because if it's taped, no one, you're likely going to get less people. If it's live at 3, people who didn't know it was live at 3 are going to go on at 8 o'clock anyway to tune in. That is the interesting thing. Are we going to be, Monday at 3 p.m.? Let me load up Netflix. I'm off work, or oh, I'm at work. Don't text me anything that's happening on Raw, like during the most important Raws of the season.
Yeah. I mean, I think they have no reason not to air it at 1, 2, 3 p.m., whatever it might be, because why not? It's 2024 going into 2025. We all get the dirt sheets, the spoilers, the whatever. Even when I'm not trying to, I open X and I see the breaking news or what happened on the tape show. Why not just air it live and put it back up at 8 o'clock? I think that's exactly what they're going to do, especially considering they've kind of done this with PLEs. The Saudi show, Crown Jewel, was just at 1 p.m. East Coast time. You know, why not again? I see no reason to do it any other way. The SmackDowns, like you said, are a bit more troublesome. Those are probably taped shows, I imagine so. It does lead me also, though, to bring up, you mentioned the crowds, how great the crowds are going to be, and they are going to be fantastic. And they usually are going into Mania season, yes. But I think from like a marketing standpoint, for WWE, this is very, very big. Where wrestling is already, WWE specifically, bigger than ever right now. Hot as could be, all over. Fans that you didn't know were fans are fans again. It's very big right now. The TV shows, the PLEs are always huge events, especially these stadium shows now. They got people showing up from everywhere. When you're talking about live TV, though, how do you draw people in? I had friends that haven't watched wrestling in years hitting me up to talk about how crazy the AJ Styles reaction in France was. Imagine if that's just on cable TV, that type of reaction. That does wonders, in my opinion, for the publicity of WWE. People are going to be chattering about that, talking about that. Even if you're one of those old wrestling fans where you don't really watch, you might see that clip online and kind of open your eyes a little bit, go, wow, that's kind of nuts. This is just wrestling right now. It might draw you back in to this new era we're in.
I know someone who was so anti-wrestling. They used to be a wrestling fan, hated it after, one of those where you're a kid, you love it, you find out it's fake, then you hate it.
There
And
was
you
a
know,
rough era there too. Yeah,
yeah, of
yeah.
course. But they're back in. And
Yep.
they said Crown Jewel was the first full pay-per-view PLE that they've watched
Mm-hmm.
in years. And it sucks that wasn't one of the better ones. I was like, oh
Yeah.
well, rough. There's been some
That's why
great
I watch
ones.
WrestleMania.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I was like, hang in for Survivor Series. Should be much better.
Yeah.
But that's where they're at right now. We've talked about it. It is cool again. It is
Mm-hmm.
very popular again. The overseas growth, mainly with those PLEs, it feels more global than ever. They've always stressed how global they are, but most of the time, the US would get every PLE. Most of the weekly shows would be in the US, and then it's like the one show in London and one show in Manchester for a Raw and a SmackDown, something like that. Those days are so long gone. And I think it is a bit of an adjustment for the American fans because the American fans who we have had it so good and easy for so long, this new wave of PLEs being overseas and happening during the day or happening at, 5, 6 p.m. It's a new era, but
Mm-hmm.
these shows, a lot of them, they don't have a drop off. It'd be
Yeah.
different if the show was at, Crown Jewel obviously is a little bit different. The Saudi shows are a bit of exhibitions.
Yeah. They're
But
anomalies. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But like Backlash in France was very good. Like those shows don't have drop offs. It'd be
What
different.
about the upcoming Backlash in Tokyo?
Yeah. Thanks, Meltzer. Great job reporting. These shows don't have drop offs in them being good or not because they're overseas. It'd be different, if the pay-per-views or PLEs stunk and it's like, all right, well, I'm not gonna waste my Saturday afternoon watching this. Like it's not good right now. It's must see. So it's like,
Yep.
all right, well, that's my plans for Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're wrestlers now too, all over WWE, all over all wrestling. They're from all over the place: Australia, Ireland, London, all over. It's nice to see the Sheamus pop in Ireland. The Australian pop for Rhea Ripley. Those homes for those wrestlers. It really puts them on another level. It makes them feel like real superstars. So just to be able to explore a little bit more, go around, go to these places they haven't quite been even necessarily, not for a while, not on live TV, does wonders for everybody all around. this is even a bold claim. This is maybe years in the making, but there's been a lot of change in wrestling in the world. We had a pandemic. Vince McMahon's gone. Triple H is in. At a point, we were about to get NXT all over the map. We are in a bigger picture now. The guy that was running that small brand is running the whole thing realistically. How far off are we from a European performance center of sorts, a secondary home for WWE? I'm not saying we get NXT Europe, but the traveling across the country is becoming so much more common now. Saudi's almost a second home to them, if we're being honest. They have a whole arena thing there, whatever they call it. I don't even know. But at what point do they create, maybe in London, let's run with, do they create this home for WWE?
I mean, they're closer now than ever. If you think about, they're moving the performance, just literally glitched. They're moving the performance center from Florida to Vegas.
That's interesting
It,
to me. I don't know how I
it,
feel about that.
I don't think it's a great idea, but
Yeah.
you know, I think it's not a great idea for logistically speaking, not for
Yes.
mm, uh monetization.
But here's my thing. Let me just say this real quick. Whether it's a good idea or not, why not just leave the one in Florida and have another one in Vegas? And then
Agreed.
you have, it's easier for the wrestlers to travel and things like that too, whatnot. I don't think that's the worst idea, but I also don't run the company.
Who knows? Maybe they are. Maybe they're going to
Yeah.
use it for something else. I have no idea. But you have that. You have this new WWE ID of them pairing with all these independent companies. I think the next step, we know, obviously, look, the relationship didn't go great with a lot of those UK companies that they had the partnerships with. It was
Yeah.
more of a one-sided,
Progress and whatnot.
it was more of a one-sided partnership, but there was a lot of things that kind of went into that ruined it. I think we're likely to get the WWE ID expand back over there. And that
Mm-hmm.
be, look, all right, we don't have NXT UK anymore, but that be a thing again over there.
100%. That's kind of where my thought was going when I bring up like a European performance center. Uh, it is interesting too because NXT UK wasn't that bad. If I'm being honest, I kept up a little bit. I didn't watch every single show. The crop of talent that is in WWE, Gunther, Ilya, or Amensa. There's a few names, Noam Dar, whatnot, Piper Niven. They got the crop of talent that should be in the main company on the main company, but there's definitely a few that they missed out on because it folded over time.
Well, I mean, you're
The
missing the biggest one. It's where Rhea
Drew,
started.
Ray, yeah, true, yes, yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah, I was gonna say, I said Drew. What am I thinking?
Yeah.
Just thinking of European guys,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. Um, the WWE idea is kind of where my thought process goes, where now you can tag these stars that are not only in Tennessee or whatever, everywhere.
Yeah. I do think, and Pretty Deadly also. That's another big one
That is another
from,
big one. Yes, yeah, that is
yeah.
another big one. Yep.
Yeah. Which, I mean, look, they haven't done crazy on the main roster, but we love them.
Yet
Like,
they haven't done anything yet.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
time. Wrestling. We say this all the time. Wrestling's timing. If it
Yeah.
doesn't work right now, it doesn't work. Now, listen. Did they force in like a Machine Gun story? Yeah, maybe, sure. But it's also the Motor City Machine Guns finally coming to WWE. You work around it to make that work. Pretty Deadly, great tag team. They will have their time. It doesn't maybe fit the bill to push them into the Bloodline story right now to take the belts. Post Mania, whatever it is, I'm sure eventually we're going to get that Pretty Deadly run. Not only them, a bunch of wrestlers, a bunch of superstars.
Yeah. Look, the Theory and Waller team was something that we had asked for, didn't come for a while. They finally got paired. They were just losing all the time. They
Mm-hmm.
got paired, but they weren't really doing anything. And then they won the titles at Mania.
Not only
And
did they win the titles at Mania, they won the titles at Mania with two people in the stands cheering like crazy.
that's right.
It was just us. It was just us.
we we might have been the only two people cheering
No,
from.
maybe I'm exaggerating, okay? But for real, within our area of what I could hear and see, the only people cheering for Theory and Waller. It was the only people.
We were on the opposite side of a lot of the
A lot of
cheering.
the cheering, yeah.
We were, we were
So
standalones. We make our own decisions.
we do. And now listen, this podcast is fun. We go on a little bit of tangents here. It's WrestleMania story time. WrestleMania, we're sitting nosebleeds, all right? We were sitting up there pretty high. It's okay. Good view. In front of us, I hope this kid watches C2 Wrestling one day.
That'd be
We had a
great.
kid in front of us, great kid, big fan of wrestling with his mother. They were awesome. We were interacting a lot. And every time we would cheer for the heel, they would turn around, snap his neck, and yell at us or something, man. And it was a lot of fun. We had heads turning, is my point, for who we were cheering for.
It was so funny by like the third person. It was very obvious when we were standing O for Dom. We were the only ones cheering for
Oh
Dom.
yeah, yeah.
But it was like the third or fourth heel that we had cheered. And he just turned to us. He's like, "Are you guys just cheering the opposite of me?" And we're like, "No, like we actually want these people to win."
Yeah,
He's like, "I think
like
you're
I'm
just
wearing
going
a
against me."
theory
Yeah.
shirt. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think you're just going against me. I'm like, "No, I swear I want this person to win."
Dirty Dom's the best. I don't know what to
Yeah,
tell you.
exactly. He's the GOAT. But yes, that was a great time. So we classic tangents that we'll be full of. One that can absolutely lead to a tangent is one thing I texted you about that I think would be pretty fun to kind of discuss. At the time of recording this, it is the presidential election going on right now. And Trump's a WWE Hall of Famer, right? They put him in?
Yes, I was actually thinking about this earlier. He's definitely a Hall of Famer. I don't think they revoked it. They might have at a point. I don't know if they
I
ever
don't think they
reissued
did.
it. Obviously, they did Hogan, but that's kind of what makes me think they maybe did Trump. I honestly don't remember. But even if he isn't now, it's still a WWE Hall of Famer. Let's be real.
Pretty much. So look, we're not going to talk about which wrestler
Politics
would
at
make
all.
the yeah, exactly, or which wrestler would make the best president or anything like that. What we are going to talk about is celebrities in wrestling because we've seen a lot of wrestlers that have crossed over from being wrestlers to celebrities,
Mhm.
but we're talking thousands of the other way, celebrities crossing into wrestling. So before we talk about like pipe dream or who would make sense for certain shows,
Mhm.
especially with WWE being as mainstream as possibly ever,
Yeah.
are there any like maybe take me back when you were a kid? There any like celebrity appearances where you're like, man, that's cool, or like, man, like that's gonna stick with me forever?
Yeah.
The Raw celebrity GM run
Well,
obviously is strong.
there's a prominent one for me that I'm sure if you thought hard enough, you could think of. Seeing Big Ben Roethlisberger and the
Yeah.
Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Raw was the best of both worlds, as Hannah Montana would say, colliding. That was fantastic stuff for
Yeah.
me as a kid. Honestly, I'd probably love it now, even more now than I would have back then. But there is a difference, though, too. Like, that's a great celebrity appearance. As you said, that guest GM era had a lot of those. There's maybe a difference, though, too, in like an appearance or somebody wrestling a match. You know, Big Ben was great. Loved seeing that one. There were some other comedians around there. Seth Green was on. That's a fun one, sure. There's obviously an argument that Logan Paul is the best celebrity in ring performer. I don't even know if I can call him that anymore, though. He's just an in ring performer, really, at this point. So he's almost in a category of his own. When it comes to a physical match standpoint, there is only so many to bring up. The obvious names would be Logan Paul, Stephen Amell, and then Pat McAfee. Honestly, those are the three names that immediately come to mind of the best in ring matches. For those that haven't seen it, the Pat McAfee match I'm more so referring to is the one against Adam Cole in NXT. That's the one that really steals the show for me. He's shown some spotlights before. He's been in the spotlight before, but that match in NXT was his real highlight reel moment.
Yeah, and he was in a War Games match too.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's right. Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's right. I
that's
totally forgot about that.
yeah. That's it.
That's
Yeah, he jumped off the
crazy.
cage, right?
Yeah. Did he?
Didn't he?
God, did he jump off the cage?
I feel like he did, right?
I don't remember that. Did
I
he?
feel like he did a swanton, or maybe he didn't. I know Ricochet jumped off the cage
Yeah,
and like almost
Ricochet.
broke his neck.
He did like a double front flip or something. A couple
Yeah.
people have done the jump off the cage. Don't get me wrong, but
Or
I don't.
did he suplex Cole or
I don't
something?
remember. I gotta look it up.
While you look it up, I will talk
Yes,
about
yes. Keep talking.
other moments.
He
And
did.
I
He did.
think
He did.
he did, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
Yeah. Was it
3 years ago.
it's only 3 years ago? It feels like it was 10.
Yeah, that's 3 years ago though. That's like that COVID War Games.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more forgettable than some other ones, I'm sure. But still an NXT War Games too. But that is crazy. I forgot about that one.
Yeah. Look, there's so many wrestling celebrity appearances that like it's impossible to name them all. And like
Yeah,
we didn't do any research into this. This is just like, things that we remember. Obviously, for me when I was a kid, the Floyd Big Show feud,
big one.
That was a big one as a kid,
Mhm.
no pun intended. That was a big one. I remember Floyd breaking Big Show's nose,
That was
and
crazy.
it was like the craziest thing as a kid because it was so obviously him punching him in the face. Like,
Breaking his nose.
yeah, it was the most obvious thing. And I remember thinking like Big Show's gonna crush him. Just not really, you're still a kid. You don't really you get it, but you don't. I mean, at that point,
Yeah.
that's
You're
2000, what, 7?
so yeah, six or
Yeah, we're
seven
we're
maybe.
like
Yeah. Now
10.
listen, like people compare wrestling a lot to movies and TV. I'm a big movie guy as well. What you do a lot with movies, you do the same with wrestling. As a kid, it's no problem, but you suspend your disbeliefs, is what you do. You realize that the Marvel movie you're watching, it's not real. Okay. Wrestling's in a similar field. It's all the fun of it. You suspend your disbeliefs for a little bit and you enjoy what you're watching. As a kid, it's so much easier just to think through that and go, maybe I know it's staged a little bit, but you're just there to have the fun.
Yeah, so that was obviously a big match. There's also like other big moments. I remember Hugh Jackman punching Dolph
That's a big
Ziggler.
one. Yep.
That
Love Hugh Jackman.
yeah, that felt like, and also I think that was a legit punch too.
Yes.
Nothing,
Yeah. It was, if I remember correctly, didn't he like break his jaw or something? Am
something
I
like
making that
that. I
up?
think I think I think you're right. Um, one
Well, there
that's
was another
funny,
funny. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
one that's funny
Mm-hmm.
was Seth Green.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Seth Green's a good one. I remember John Heater being pretty funny
Yep.
during the Raw GM era as well. That's a good one. Um, Man, the Seth Green one is funny. Seth Green's great. But I was going to bring up a pretty prominent one for you, as the Ben one was for me, pretty relevant too. This past WrestleMania,
Oh yeah, of
Lane
course.
Johnson, Jason Kelsey. That's a big one.
Yeah, that's and Swoop, the Eagles mascot.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that was a huge one. I think also one of the more hilarious ones, which truly kind of sum up the time in
Mm-hmm.
WWE, was when Ozzy
The
Osbourne was the
Muppets.
guest.
Yeah. Yeah.
That too,
Yeah.
but Ozzy
Ozzy Osbourne's a
Osbourne
good
as
one.
the guest
Chris
GM.
Chris Masters doing the
Yeah,
pecs.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that is just like, look,
What a time to be alive.
it wasn't good,
Yeah.
but that's kind of like our childhood. So it
Yeah.
like kind of stuck with us. We felt like it was better than it really was.
Yeah, there's some other like in hindsight, it's so funny. Now, for those of you that don't know, we did just mention in a recent video, we are from Toms River, New Jersey, the home of Simon Dean, pretty close to the home of the Jersey Shore. Okay. Snooki having a match at WrestleMania is
Yeah.
so crazy in hindsight. How did that ever come about? Listen, this is a wrestling podcast. It goes to show how big the Jersey Shore was that she had a WrestleMania match. That's nuts.
What's hilarious too is that time period, whatever WWE would do, TNA would do something like the diet version.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like, you have Zack Ryder. Well, now we have Robbie E.
yeah,
You have the
yeah.
Daniel Bryan title run, and yeah, we have the Eric Young title run. You have Snooki on WrestleMania. I don't remember if Angelina was the first one, but I mean TNA had
Jay
Angelina,
Wow,
they had JWoww, and they had
Ronnie.
Ronnie. And Ronnie,
Yeah,
like I think Ronnie teamed with Eric Young.
something. Yeah,
Yeah, like they got him and like look, obviously Snooki's the biggest out of,
all of them. Yeah,
Snooki, Paulie, and the Situation are the three biggest. So much bigger scale for WWE, but that is also just a hilarious time of seeing TNA kind of taking like the tier below and trying to do similar things and get that
yeah.
similar rub that WWE would.
It is interesting though too because we can. There's been so many celebrities involved in wrestling, and there's a lot of them you can shit on. We can sit here and shit on the Snooki WrestleMania match, but celebrities in wrestling have been so prominent since the beginning of wrestling. It is a big part of what is World Wrestling Entertainment. WrestleMania 1 is centered around the biggest guy at that time, Mr. T. I don't think people nowadays will talk about it or give her the credit she deserves for it. But at the time, Cyndi Lauper being around in WWE was massive. We weren't here to see it, but we are wrestling fans. We know about it, understand the importance behind it and what it did for wrestling, what it was for people back then. Yeah, like that's a crazy thing to see. Cyndi Lauper, Mr. T, Mike Tyson. There's been so many appearances by stars that are bigger than life at the time. It's crazy. Mike Tyson is a wild one.
Yeah, and
Wild one.
they kind of stressed that in the Vince Netflix doc. The Mike Tyson
Yes.
bringing, the Cyndi Lauper bringing, like those were really stressed on how big they were not only for the company but the growth of wrestling essentially,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of taking the WWE to that mainstream level. Another one that I just remembered, and it's actually funny because one of the more random ones was Jon Stewart helping Seth Rollins win the WWE title against John Cena.
That is, listen, Jon Stewart, like being on the show is one thing. Interfering in the championship match was on zero bingo cards that day. Like, that is a crazy one. There's been some other crazy ones, but that one might take the cake of the most, like, huh?
Yeah.
Like, what were they kind of doing? Not that it's that bad, but I don't know what the thought process was for that one.
Yeah, just like it wasn't even like he was really in the story. And I feel like it was on Raw. They had him cut a promo saying that, like, something about his kid, Cena was setting a bad example or something. Cena punched him, something like that. Like, they
Yeah,
tried to make it make sense. It didn't make sense. I love Jon Stewart, but that made zero
zero
sense
sense. Yeah.
at all. A couple other funny ones I was just like that are just popping in my head, like Drew
Mm-hmm.
Carey
Drew
being in the
Carey.
Royal
Yeah.
Rumble,
Pete Rose.
Pete Rose, yep,
Yeah.
in the
There's a couple of good
gobbledygooker.
ones.
Yeah.
God, yeah, yeah. There is some good ones. Again, that Raw GM era had some fun moments. Don't get me wrong. We've had a lot of celebrities over the years. Now more than ever, we're starting just to see people pop up here and there. You can think all the way back to those early days again of Cyndi Lauper, Mr. T. There's people that I don't even probably know off the top of my head that were coming around back then. They did in that Vince stock. They really kind of show how important Tyson and Cyndi Lauper were to that era. If I remember correctly, like I got wrestling on MTV back then, having Cyndi Lauper on, and that MTV back then is the network. That's the channel to be on. That's what made wrestling hip and cool in a way. That's what made music hip and cool. It's crazy to think about how prominent some of these celebrities are, and then how not prominent some of these celebrities are.
Yeah. And now this new wave, I don't want to say new wave of celebrities, but with WWE reaching its popularity, it's been a lot of mix of hip hop celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
One of the longest like rumors, I don't know if you can call it a rumor, but one of the more talked about things was Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion having a match or something, which for me, that's something I was like, I've never cared for that.
No interest.
Like, no
Yeah.
interest at all. It'd
At
be
all. At
cool if
all.
they appeared, I guess. But now Cardi B is a part of the SummerSlam promotion,
Yeah.
and she's in the commercial and it's her song. Like, look, I'm not advocating for a Cardi B match at SummerSlam, but this is probably the closest it's been from those rumors. I do think though, like, they've done a good job mixing in these celebrities. Sexy Red's been on NXT multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I don't need another celebrity wrestling match in my life.
Yeah, it's a super rare one. If it's ever going to be anybody, it needs to be somebody. A Bad Bunny is I don't know how he didn't drop his name yet either, to be honest.
Oh
But
yeah, that's a
that's a
bad job
huge
by
one.
us.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Yeah, Bad Bunny should have been one of the first names we talked about. Uh, which I'll cut myself off to bring up. That entrance in Puerto Rico truly is the greatest wrestling entrance of all time. It's crazy to think that the greatest wrestling entrance of all time goes to Bad Bunny. That is wild, but that really is. I get chills when I watch it. Crazy entrance. But you need somebody that is not that he ever would, probably, especially not considering he plays professional basketball, but a Tyrese Halliburton. Somebody that is athletic, somebody that is a fan of wrestling, understands it a bit more than Snooki. That's how you get the Logan Paul, the Pat McAfees, the guys that maybe actually get it and can do it a little bit more. But I stand on the same page that, like, I don't know if I ever need it. That's a rare one for me.
So there is one that did spark my mind that I meant to bring up earlier, but you bringing up Tyrese Halliburton reminded
Mm-hmm.
me. The only one that would probably interest me, and it wouldn't happen anytime soon, would probably be George Kittle.
Yeah, that's a fair one. I could definitely see that. He's also not a wrestling fan. He's a deep wrestling fan. He was
Yeah.
throwing up Zero Fear before Pentagon was even really on TV. He's
Yeah.
a big wrestling fan. Uh that's a good one. He is similar to Tyrese Halliburton, football player. I don't know if they're going to let him get the physical side of things. We
It
saw
had to be when he
stuff with
retires. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, we saw some stuff with Gronk, whatnot. It's nothing crazy, not big, and never really had that match. He also was super scared to fall 4 feet or something like that. Vince had to show him how to do it, whatever that story is. But those athletes are more the names I'd like to see. I agree.
I actually think Mojo Rawley told a story like they were supposed to do uh Gronk versus Mojo. I want to
Mm-hmm.
say it was supposed to be like two matches. They were going to
Mm.
face in Saudi, I think.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if there was to be a celebrity appearance from like a high level celebrity athlete, it wouldn't really surprise me if it happened in Saudi. And honestly, if it's gonna happen, I guess that's where I would want it. But then again, you never know though, because in theory, I would have said the same thing about Bad Bunny a few years back. But then he goes to have a classic with Damian Priest, the best entrance of all time. So you never know. You really never know. The first name to come to my mind, something to say, or are you just
No,
going to cut me
good.
off? Okay, okay.
No, 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 no. World revolves around Snowden.
It does. Okay. Um, the first name when you had texted me about this idea to talk about celebrities in wrestling, the first name that came to mind that he's maybe been on screen before in the fans, something. I'm not really sure if he's been super involved. I don't know if I need him in a match. But what came to my mind for a match, Kevin Owens, I don't know why it fits the bill, but a heel Kevin Owens, if he's able to go, and O'Shea Jackson Jr., Ice Cube's son. I feel like that fits the bill for some reasons to me. I don't know. He's obviously a big fan of wrestling. He's a big personality too. I feel like a guy like that, maybe he's not some incredible athlete, but he's a big movie star. When he has a new movie coming out, which he does, they are releasing a Den of Thieves 2. It's a big movie starring Gerard Butler and O'Shea Jackson. When that is starting to be promoted and come out, why not get him on screen? Why not have him on WWE to some degree? It doesn't have to be a match, but you show him on camera, you have him backstage doing something. Maybe it's a stunner. I don't know. How do you not get him involved?
Yeah, completely agree. And I know some of these guys, their schedules. Look, the ones who are former wrestlers, you can barely get them to show back up on WWE because their
Yeah.
schedule is so bad. It's the same as all these other actors and performers, whatever. Their
Mm-hmm.
schedules are insane. So it is very difficult, but it is possible. And look, I don't think we're ever going to reach a point where there's just never going to be another celebrity match or anything like that. I said I could do without it just because I think we've reached the pinnacle of them. I
Yes.
think Logan Paul and Bad Bunny not only have they kind of put the ceiling on it for it, but they've also kind of raised expectations.
Yes.
So it's almost like a disservice to have. I'm not saying any of these people would go in and be horrible, and it is very big on their dance partners.
Mm-hmm.
Miz and Morrison don't get enough love for how great they
One
were in
thousand
that
percent.
in
Yep.
that Bad Bunny, Damian Priest
Tag
tag match.
match. Mm-hmm.
So obviously it would be very big on their dance partners for the match. But I think the bar, the ceiling's now set higher, but now the floor is set so much higher that it's unrealistic to get any other
Yeah.
celebrity in there and do something and it be like worthy and respectable to the fans and not just feel like a publicity stunt,
Yeah.
money grab, anything like that.
If we're being realistic, you can give him a year of training. I don't think Travis Scott is having the match that Bad Bunny or so and so put on. We're giving a lot of props to guys like Bad Bunny, Pat McAfee, Logan Paul, but I do got to bring up another celebrity name that really kind of is more recent in a way, but broke down the door, broke that barrier for celebrities, athletes, maybe being actual wrestlers. That's another former Pittsburgh Steeler, D'Angelo Williams. That's my guy. That's my guy right there.
Well, to be fair, I mean, we now that the names keep flowing in,
Flowing, yeah.
we got Lawrence Taylor obviously having a
Yep.
main that is one of the biggest at
Mm-hmm.
that time, not
That's
talked about as much anymore, kind of feels
yes.
like it gets lost in history, but shouldn't be because of the magnitude of it. Like
Yeah.
it's endless. It honestly it goes to the joke that
I
everything is wrestling.
we didn't even mention, yeah, one of the biggest ones in the history of wrestling and Dennis Rodman.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
mailman, Carmelo. That's a big, big feud. Dennis Rodman is a focal point in WCW history when you really think about it. That's crazy. But that was the biggest thing back then. He was skipping practices to
Yeah.
be on wrestling. That's crazy. That's
Like, could
nuts.
you imagine if you got an ESPN alert and it was like Tyrese Halliburton suspended by Pacers for 3 games because he showed up on SmackDown with the Bloodline?
Yeah,
Like,
like that's crazy to think about, and that is a different era in wrestling. Don't get me wrong, but it's maybe even crazier to happen back then than it would be now. Dennis Rodman is a name that is in the. I don't. Maybe he's not a direct WWE Hall of Famer. If he's
I
not,
don't
he
think
should
so.
be. He definitely should be, in my opinion. There's a lot of them that should be. The celebrity matchups, again, where I think we're in agreement that I don't necessarily need them. We are pretty much getting one at almost every WrestleMania, probably. WrestleMania is a spectacle. We don't say it, WWE says it. It's not just a wrestling show, wrestling event. It is a spectacle. It is a different magnitude event where all these worlds collide. We get a live performance or two. We get the wrestling. We get the celebrity appearances, the football players interacting, getting involved. It's more than just wrestling. We're pretty much getting one of those matches at almost every WrestleMania.
For sure. And even if it's not a match, it's some sort of moment like Snoop Dogg being
Yeah,
involved
yeah,
in some
yeah.
aspect where he's in Mysterio's entrance or he's facing the Miz.
Mm-hmm.
There's always going to be that. And I think it's right now much better than in years past. They don't feel as reliant on it. And I think it helps that they have so much star power on their roster that
Mm-hmm.
it's almost a disservice to them to do that. But at the same time, you have to understand that that's just business. And that's
Yeah.
just, if you're in Philadelphia, you're going to try to get some Eagles players in there. When
Mm-hmm.
I am positive at the Rumble, they will try to have Halliburton there, McAfee
Absolutely.
there. Like
Yeah.
those are
Yeah.
indie
I
guys,
I would I would put my life on the line that McAfee's at the Rumble. Let's be realistic. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's only how it works. The Vegas. Listen, the Raiders aren't too prominent. But like somebody might be there. Like we're gonna get something. Every Mania, not even just Mania now. With a lot of these shows becoming 2-night events, SummerSlam is a spectacle now. Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, like you said, we're getting some involvement. We just had Jelly Roll, at SummerSlam, who, not to incorrectly quote him, but I saw some quote recently where he said, I won awards this year for this and that, but SummerSlam was the best moment of this year so far. That only does wonders for wrestling. That is a crazy thing to hear. Maybe he is some massive wrestling fan. I'm not too positive on Jelly Roll. Doesn't even matter. For somebody of that level to come out and say that, it puts wrestling on a pedestal.
Yeah. And he had a cool moment,
He did.
the theory,
All the credit in the
beautiful.
world to Austin
Yeah.
Theory.
Exactly. As we said, it's the dance partner. Since you brought him up, I do have to mention when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to now more so with the singers and the artists that they bring in, whether it's a national anthem or whatever. That's been a thing in not just WWE, but wrestling for years, and it's not going to go away. I really hope, and it seems like we are with Triple H,
Mm-hmm.
we are past those like mid-show concert breaks. Like some of that, like when we found out we were getting a Jelly Roll performance at SummerSlam, I was like, oh, I kind of like cool. Like I don't know much about him, but like I don't want to be waiting for Cody solo, and we got to get through a Jelly Roll concert. And they opened with it. They did the song,
Yeah.
got out of the way. Sweet,
So much better.
perfect. Some of
Yeah.
them though, like Hardy's 0 for 2 on WWE programming. Like we don't need
Yeah.
any of that anymore.
It's pretty much forever. Okay.
Yeah,
Let's never have him back again. Nothing against you, Hardy. Addressed as your brother last week.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, Jelly Roll. I'm not too familiar with Jelly Roll's music, not really my style, but I think Jelly Roll's a great personality. I kind of love his style, the way he holds himself, things like that. So I think he's a great person to have on TV. And again, going into these Europe shows, these European shows out of other countries, wherever they're going, leading into WrestleMania, maybe we start to see more stars pop up there. Maybe we get somebody that lives there that is a famous Idris Elba, an actor. I don't know. That's the first name to come to mind for some reason. F1 is big overseas. Maybe we get a driver at some show or something. They're definitely starting to get people involved all over. Bad Blood, which was only a couple weeks ago in a way, had so many celebrity appearances, I feel like, in comparison to other wrestling shows. Now, Atlanta is kind of like a hub for a lot of that, realistically, music, things like that. But still, I feel like the opening to that show was like, here's this person and this person and this person and so on. And I don't know how it works. Maybe WWE is reaching out to these people. Hey, Travis Scott, come get front row seats, whatever. They still show up. You know what I mean? It's very easy to say I can't do it or no. It only, again, is an attestament to how popular wrestling is right now.
And one more branch that we got to talk about before we move on is the
Mm-hmm.
UFC partnership. It's obviously the same company. You get Michael Chandler on Raw cutting a promo about Conor McGregor. We have Conor McGregor saying to Cody Rhodes, "I'll see you soon." Now, the latest
Mm-hmm.
Conor news, I don't know if we'll see him soon. But we know there's going to be some Ireland shows. I think they might be there on tour right now. I think they were
Yep.
just in Dublin, or they're going there. Something I can't remember Cody's Instagram story, but I know it was in some time frame. And you got Conor McGregor talking about linking up with him. I mean, Conor is one of, if not the biggest combat sports star in the world.
Ever. Yeah.
And, talking about that. That's just goes to, I know it's the same company essentially at this point. Well, not essentially, it is the
Yeah.
same, owned by the same company, but that's still like things that you thought you would never see that you just see now.
Yeah, and like I mean, Connor's a great example of if you're WWE right now, and I maybe I remember incorrectly, but I do believe they have an Ireland show coming up. I believe it's like a Raw too. It's not a live event if I remember correctly. How do you not try to have the All American champion Cody Rhodes come out to the ring in Ireland and Conor McGregor confronts him? That's the Bret Hart in Canada type. Cody's the heel in Ireland if Conor comes out. Like that is a
Well,
moment in
Connor's not
history.
that loved in Ireland, honestly.
Yeah, it's very, yes.
Yeah.
But just I feel like with wrestling, in the terms of the situation, that's how it would go down. Is Connor's getting that pop? That'd be his maybe first time arriving if it doesn't happen prior to then, it could be crazy. That's again, it's a history making moment for WWE.
Yeah. So a lot of crazy stuff on the way. And it's not a C2 wrestling podcast if we don't talk about what's going on right now. And the biggest story right now is still the bloodline. And
Forever and always.
forever and always, we got some hilarious Sami Zayn posts on Twitter and Instagram
Yeah.
of him posting that meme of them all together younger. It's like, it's one of those things where before it happened, I was very critical, but everything, it's going to be good. It almost kind of like, it just, they get you, they suck you in instantly. I was
Yeah.
just not even like a week ago being like, this is moving too quick. This is moving too quick. And even though I still feel that way in my heart of hearts, they put on a promo or
Mm-hmm.
two and I'm like, oh my God, this is just the best shit ever. This is so good.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they were
Yeah.
losing me, but it just keeps getting better and better. And now War Games, like we are there. And this
Mm-hmm.
Friday is like, I am bummed I'm working because I feel like this is one of those bloodline segments that it's for when WWE puts out the rewind or whatever, the timeline, whatever it is. This is
Mm-hmm.
one where it's going to say, November 7th. I don't know what day Friday is, whatever.
So yeah.
November, whatever, 2024, the core four reunites, whatever, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what this Friday feels like.
You mean
And
Wade Barrett, Justin Gabriel,
Ezekiel
Ezekiel
Jackson
Jackson? Yeah.
and Heath Slater. Yeah. The
And
core.
he's yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
They are one.
they're
Um,
reunited.
this feels like one of those shows that I know there's a lot going on in the world, so it kind of doesn't feel as big. And they
Mm-hmm.
set it on a taped show, so it might not feel as big. But I don't think it could be stressed enough that like we are getting one of those marquee segments
Mm-hmm.
Friday. Like
Yep.
we need to be ready for it.
We do, and I still feel like it's been a bit rushed. It has been, it's happened quicker than I expected. But I'm not faulting WWE at all for it or anybody because maybe I'm putting too much faith in, but it's all been so good for a while now that why shouldn't I have faith that they know what they're doing? That maybe it is a little rushed, but maybe it's for a reason. Maybe there's something bigger coming, something else is planned. So I'm going with the flow of it. I'm enjoying what's in front of me. It's been great stuff. The segment between the Usos and Sammy that just happened recently on Raw was fantastic stuff. Like you said, Sammy's been posting a lot on Twitter again, falling back into like almost that honorary Us character, the goofiness. And man, Cody winning the title, all right, from Roman at Mania is obviously the story. I don't know if there's ever been a time where I've wanted someone to win the championship from somebody more than I did Sammy and Roman during that time frame. It's almost, we say this a lot, you put yourself in a corner in the best way possible. You have two hard decisions to make. Do you go the Cody route or the Sammy route? It's a great decision either way. They went the latter, the Cody route, sure. But man, Sammy was over the moon at that point in time. Putting the title on him would have been such a crazy moment. Maybe it doesn't last as long as the Cody thing has, so maybe that's why they went that route. But maybe we fall back into that line. Maybe Sammy hits that realm again where he's over the moon, and maybe we do finally get this potential Sammy push at the end of this.
And look, at the time, people were not happy that it was leading to Sammy and Owens going for the tag titles.
Mm-hmm.
But granted, if they don't do that, we don't get the Roman 1,000 days, which
Yep.
they were that close. They were always going to go for it. We
Yes.
don't get the Cody finishing the story at Mania 40 to that magnitude. It
Mm-hmm.
basically had to go the way it went. One thing I do think about with this story is we talked so much. We've known for months the Bloodline story is leading to War Games. We have
Yeah.
known pretty much since Solo started the Bloodline 2.0. War Games will be OG Bloodline versus New Bloodline. But one thing that never really gets dis- discussed, does that
Disgust.
discussed, is who wins.
So I think they probably have the OG Bloodline win. I don't know if that's the right choice, to be honest. I don't think the new Bloodline. I think the new Bloodline winning via like the slight tension, whatever it may be, between the OG Bloodline is maybe the better route. Um, it depends on their end game here. What is the end game? Is it Roman Rock? Is it Roman this? Is it Solo this? Is it Fatu? Who knows? Maybe that's where Fatu gets the big pin on Roman or something, and we are now getting some. Maybe that happens, and then maybe Fatu is over the moon, and we start to see tension between Solo and him. Who knows the route they're going? But I do think the idea here is fan service, just like WrestleMania 40 was. Give the fans what they want. Predictable is good when it's done right. OG Bloodline reunites with Sammy. They stand tall at the end of that show.
I'm going to spoil a little bit of news here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's going to be a little bit of breaking news. It's not the most surprising thing, but we will be doing at the end of the year, towards New Year's, whatever, one of those podcasts, we will be doing our first award show that will be a yearly thing. We are committed. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how else we have to put it. We are committed.
Yeah.
The Halloween thing is a yearly thing. The award show is a yearly thing.
Mm-hmm.
When I start thinking about the Bloodline story, when I start thinking about what could happen this Friday with that segment, I start thinking of like generic awards where it's like, man, I might fall into recency bias on what could win, moment of the year, match of the year, things like that. Because even though we are towards the end of the year, it feels like we have so many massive moments still to come. Like, I don't think it'll be the craziest thing, but who knows what could even happen at Saturday night's main event with
Mm-hmm.
them wanting to treat it like this massive PLE, whatever. That could be Roman versus Solo one on one and Solo beats him or something like that. Like, we don't know. That is like the crazy part to me that we have under 2 months left of the year, a time where normally it would feel like whatever, we're just trying to get to Mania, Rumble build. It feels like there's so many potential huge moments that could happen.
There really is so many moments that can happen. And we're closer to Mania 41 than we are being at Mania 40 like we were. We are getting into it, as we've been saying. We are on the road to War Games. And then right after that, the road to WrestleMania is now a longer road with this edition of Saturday Night's Main Event. December, for the last little bit of time, has always been kind of a stagnant month in wrestling. It's the holidays. They don't usually run a pay per view in December. It's all build to the Rumble. With Saturday Night's Main Event and them treating it like a big PLE, which I think they will treat it arguably bigger than like a standard Bad Blood. Maybe it doesn't get the SummerSlam 2 night event hype, whatever. But that is, primetime TV. That's where you're getting new fans in. You're bringing those old fans back. You're putting on a show. We're getting Owens versus Cody, Roman versus Solo, Gunther versus whoever. We're getting a stacked card there. Wrestling is great. It's always been great. There's been bad times, there's been good times. We're living in the greatest time right now. We really are. I'm very much looking forward to War Games. I'm looking forward to what's coming after that. But right now, that is where my mind is War Games. It is, again, a bit predictable on where they're going. Put my life on the line again that it's Sammy and the OG Bloodline versus the new Bloodline. But that doesn't make me any less enticed to see the SmackDown promo this week. It's must-see TV.
For sure. And I know we say predictability is good, but it's not even just predictability. It's they've been taking us on this journey,
Mm-hmm.
and we know history tells us this is an enjoyable ride.
Yes.
And it's had its lows, but the highs have been so much higher than the lows have been low.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like we are back to those highs being very high with this story. One last thing I want to touch on before we get out of here. I know we keep kind of creeping towards and talking a bit about the Raw Netflix deal, which is very close. We're just a little, almost like exactly 2 months away, maybe 2 months in a day or two.
Yeah.
We are very close to it. There's been some reports which I know you and I would agree feel like duh, like yeah, no duh, but there's still reports and we'll talk about them. The Netflix wanting certain names, Netflix looking for certain names. Now, this is the main part of it I want to talk about because, of course, they're going to ask for the biggest names. They're going to ask for Cody. They're going to ask for Punk. They're going to ask for Roman. Because why wouldn't they? They're spending like $1 billion on it. It does make me a little worried, though. These last few weeks, we've strayed farther and farther away from how the brand split was. We get the reports of Netflix wanting these
Yeah.
names that are on SmackDown. Look, I don't think we're going back to the wild card rule or anything like that, but it's creeping towards like, all right, it's just a loose brand split again. And these guys kind of stay over here. These guys kind of stay over here, but these bunch hop back and forth. That's what it's starting to feel like.
It definitely is. And, the reports of the wrestlers, the superstars that Netflix wants, CM Punk, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes. Listen, if you were to put me in charge of my own football team, the Jersey Shore Seashells, of course I'm going to want Mahomes and Derrick Henry and Jamar Chase and these
Yeah.
superstars. Obviously, Netflix is going to want the power. I don't want that for Raw on Netflix. I want Raw on Netflix to be great. Don't get me wrong. But I am a big proponent in the brand split. I love a strict brand split. Now, I have not been opposed to this loose brand split we've had over the coming weeks with the Bloodline and all that, and the women's tag titles and whatnot. It hurts the idea of a brand split. I get that. I don't think there's enough establishment in maybe the women's divisions yet to have separate tag titles and all that. But I'm a big proponent on creating your own competition. Not only do I want the brand split, I want them to get back to that time frame, that feel of Raw versus SmackDown, SmackDown versus Raw, We're competing against each other. And it's a little bit harder to do that with Netflix. There's an argument to be made that the Super Show era is the worst era that WWE has ever had. I don't even know if there's an argument to be made. I think that's fact, if we're being honest. The brand split is very important. There might be some argument out there that you have other companies around nowadays that are the competition. They're not the competition. There's no other brand competing with WWE. There's not TNA. There's no AEW. There's no New Japan. WCW was the only competition they ever had. And when that folded, they made their own competition. And I think they kind of have to do that again. Wrestling, again, is better than ever right now. It's never going to stay at 100%. There's going to be hard times again. How do you keep it as high up as you can? How do you steer away from that? And I think, again, creating that division between Raw and SmackDown is how you do so.
I'm on record saying how I think AEW made a mistake not doing a brand split,
Correct. Yes. Fact.
which I know logistically it might not have worked, but as a fan, it just felt logically
Mm-hmm.
splitting with all those issues, whatever, and creating that inner battle of one show wanting to be better. At that time, I was watching Collision. I wasn't watching Dynamite because I was actually
Mm-hmm.
enjoying Collision. It felt like a different show.
Yeah.
We were at that, and we still kind of are. We're not fully straight away from it, but Raw and SmackDown feel like different shows. One of the
Yes.
best examples we have talked about multiple times how Raw as a 2 hour show just doesn't feel right and isn't as good as SmackDown as a 2 hour show because it's just a different show. It is just
Mm-hmm.
everything about it is different and it works better with their stories that they have for being 2 hours. Raw right now does not make sense with the amount of stories and the roster that they have to be a 2 hour show. I don't want to stray away from that, especially with this Netflix deal. And you have one show that is on streaming and one show that is on cable. And look, I don't expect them to go on to cable and just start cursing like crazy and blood everywhere. I don't expect that. And I don't want that, if I'm being completely honest. But I would expect that to make it feel like two, I don't want to say two different companies, but two fully different shows. Like the best example, when I watch NXT, it doesn't feel like I'm watching a WWE show. It doesn't feel like I'm watching
Yeah.
a Raw or SmackDown. NXT is so different to Raw and SmackDown. And that's how Raw and SmackDown should be. My fear is I get Netflix wanting those people. Obviously, of course. Especially if if you can't have Punk wrestle every week, who's also a big draw. If you're not going to have Cena on every week, and Cena's probably going to be on both brands going back and forth as well. I get it. But as a fan, I just don't want to get back to that.
I definitely don't want to get back to that. They do have their own feel, Raw and SmackDown, and that is very important. Different look, different feel. I'm not saying the commentary table has to be on the entrance ramp like back in the day, but I think there's even some more they can do. We have titles. We have our own separated titles on Raw and SmackDown now, new tag titles, things like that. I think new ramps, Titantrons, your own look again goes a long way. I would go back to blue and red ring ropes. There's just so many little things that kind of all add up to a bigger thing. The brand split is massive. That it is such a proponent in wrestling that makes wrestling as good as it is. And like you had said, Netflix, there's going to be a lot more leeway, maybe more cursing, more TV 14, where SmackDown might still kind of have that PG feel, which is okay. That should also maybe for that SmackDown roster give them that drive that we don't have the outlet the Raw roster does, and we're going to show them that we're still better than them. Raw team, Raw roster, we're better than you. Again, it's friendly competition between the company, the writing rooms as well. I'm a big proponent, always have been. You can attest to this. I was calling for it for years. Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce. You need general managers. That time frame where we didn't have somebody running the show, what is even going on? It makes it feel fake. And that's what wrestling is, if we're being honest. It's scripted TV. But again, we suspend our disbeliefs as wrestling fans. When you just have this show with no life behind it, nobody's running it, it doesn't do anything for anybody.
Yeah, and I mean, even the little bit of time period where Adam Pierce was the on-screen role as like an authority figure, but he was just like, I'm that the higher ups are telling me what to do. Like it was like, then just make this guy the GM. Like, what are we doing
Yeah.
here? Why are we like it felt so weird to be like this guy wasn't a decision maker, but he's on screen like a decision maker. Like that's just that part also never made sense to me. One last thing that I just actually thought of while we were talking about this, and I had
Hmm.
mentioned Cena, the overseas tour. Like it's very interesting. This is Cena's go away tour. And a lot of these shows are overseas now. Granted, they'll get to see him one last time, but it's like, all right, now less cities, in the US going to see it. I would assume he's hitting the biggest market cities for his goodbye, and you got to go to those big cities. I'm not expecting Cena to show up at the Rataco Center in Toms River, New Jersey. But now it's like those foreign shows, that's a good chance for him to globally say goodbye to all of these fans. So that is kind of a unique think about it.
Yeah, it is unique. Rataco Center is a funny mention for all you out there that don't know the Rataco Center. Google it and find out why it's now the Poland Spring Arena. All
Yeah.
right. um, now, Cena going overseas. Cena's mentioned it before. He loves the overseas fans. He's a big proponent of that. I almost feel like this is almost a part of the shtick, the celebration tour, is that Cena probably opted to do a lot of overseas dates, so this fits the bill in my opinion. I'm not saying they scheduled these dates overseas just for Cena, but I think it all works out in the long run. Yeah, maybe there's less Cena in the States. We've got enough of him over the last 20 years. I think it's okay to send him over to Europe for a little bit. If you aren't going to see him on the celebration run, sorry, sucks for you. Buy those SummerSlam tickets. It's at MetLife. You'll find C2 Wrestling there. Should be a great time, despite it being 4 billion degrees out of New Jersey in August. That's going to be a tough one for me to get through, but I don't do too well in the heat. All right. Sunday night heat.
They actually they announced the main event.
Mm.
It is you versus the garbage can. You're going to be leaned over when you're having another heat stroke.
Story time for C2 Wrestling. WrestleMania 33 before we put you guys off for the night. WrestleMania 33, Orlando. It wasn't even that hot if we're being realistic. It's probably
It
80
was hot.
degrees, 70.
No,
Yeah, but
it was humid though.
okay. So, yeah, exactly where I'm getting. So, like on paper, it wasn't too hot, but we all live life. We all know what it can be like outside. It was an oven out there. We waited outside for a couple hours, 3 hours before we even get into the arena, sweating bullets. It's hot as could be. I don't know how Neville and Austin Aries had that match out there in that heat. I died pretty much. I came back to life throughout the show, but I pretty much had a heat stroke there in Orlando. Almost missed the Hardys. I think I had to skip the entire Cena engagement, Miz match, whatever that was.
Yeah, I didn't see any of it because I was with you.
Yeah, because I had to go by 94 waters and
Yeah.
hover over a garbage can before I
Yeah, that they
passed
poured
out.
into cups.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, they weren't pouring. Okay,
They were
story
skimping
time.
us.
They were skimping us. They were pouring Gatorades into the cups, but they were pouring like 95% of the Gatorade into the cup. Now, listen, again, it's a billion degrees out, and it's a $9 Gatorade. I want every last drop of that damn Gatorade, all right? Well, you just work minimum wage at the stadium. Give me the entire damn Gatorade. Ah.
Yeah, I was worried about you. I will say, like, I am excited for SummerSlam. I think we're going to do some fun content that entire
Yeah.
weekend. We've got some things to buy as well. I am worried about more so day two.
Yes.
Day one, you know, the adrenaline in your soul kind of gets you through. Um, might not be as bad. It's that next day,
The
you just
wear and tear from day one.
the wear and
Yeah.
tear, and there's probably SmackDown the night before, so
Hmm.
it's really day three. It's not day
Yeah.
two. Who knows what else we're doing, whatever. We're gonna be pumping out content too, so it's not like we're
Hmm.
sleeping 8 hours. I was out there in Cleveland in SummerSlam. It was hot.
Yeah. Listen, I might be on the card in a casket match.
Yeah,
Okay. Like
yeah.
it might be rough for me. I have never, since I was a kid, I don't do too well in the heat. I get heat headaches and whatnot. It's a rough life. I'll survive,
I
but
hope
yeah, I'm
so.
going to be showing up with coolers of water, all fans. Who knows what I'm going to need? It's crazy to say, that I'm hoping it rains, just to cool it a little bit.
Well, that time of year, dude, it could be, sometimes rain, it just gets hotter after.
Yes, yes, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. A lot of fun stuff coming. We mentioned the award show in about 2 months' time. SummerSlam far away, Rumble and Mania before that. So much fun stuff coming here. You got to be subscribed. You got to turn on notifications. You got to get in the comments to talk wrestling with us because that's all we want to do is chat wrestling with the folks. Keep on adding in. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and go to Snowden's personal Twitter. Give his personal Twitter a follow.
Why not? Why not? Again, go in those comments below. Bring up any celebrity appearances that we didn't mention, any fun ones. We want to talk wrestling again, talk shop with the fans of C2 Wrestling. For now, I'm Snowden,
I'm CTD.
and this is C2 Wrestling. Mwah.
And that's Tommy Boy.